What's popping, everybody? Welcome back to JCity. Smartphone camera technology has progressed so much in the last decade. To demonstrate, let me show you this picture that was taken with my iPhone 4S almost 9 years ago. This was 9 years ago, holy moly. As you can see, this picture has really bad dynamic range. It has a lot of noise, the color accuracy is not that great, and the camera was really bad in low light. Overall, the camera is just not that pleasing to the eye in today's standards. But what's so cool was that this was a real smartphone camera that people loved using to take Instagram pictures with. When this came out, the camera that it had was arguably one of the best in a smartphone at the time. Now, jumping ahead 9 years, and almost every single smartphone on the market right now has a very decent camera. Although some smartphone cameras are better than other smartphone cameras, they are generally pretty good. For example, this picture was taken with an iPhone 11 Pro. Holy crap, this looks pretty good in my opinion. Like, there's good dynamic range, there's good colors, there's bokeh in the background, which is the blur, and this was taken with something that fits into your pocket. That's pretty impressive. Literally, if you time traveled 10 years in the past and showed a smartphone photography that picture, they would honestly not even believe that that was taken with a smartphone. In my opinion, I think the 10-year improvement gap between smartphones is a lot bigger than the 10-year improvement gap between DSLR and mirrorless cameras. But now this raises the question, is it worth buying a professional level DSLR or mirrorless camera in this day and age? I mean, smartphones can now do portrait mode, night modes, and even have beauty modes and filters. Then what's the point of getting a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera? And I'm not just saying this for the sake of this video, but this actually does reflect on the sales figures of digital cameras. Like, take a look at this graphic over here. Digital camera sales have dropped 84% since 2010. That is insane to me. Like, look at the numbers, 120 million in 2010 and then 20 million in 2018. And if you look at this other graphic, you know, the lines tell the story. But anyways, today I'm going to be comparing the image quality of the iPhone 11 Pro to my main shooter, which is the Sony A7iii, which I'm using to film my video right now. I'm going to put both cameras through very common scenarios, and we pushed both cameras to the absolute limit. I mean, we tested them in extreme HDR conditions, in harsh lighting conditions, in night mode, and all that fun stuff. And the results absolutely shocked me, like it blew my mind. Of course, because of time and budget constraints, I wasn't able to test out every single scenario of photography there is, such as wildlife or sparse photography, but I will still be addressing them when we talk about the results of the pictures we got. I already know that there are going to be comments like, oh, this is such an unfair comparison, or the DSLR or mirrorless fanboys might be like, oh, of course the Sony A7iii is going to win, but hear me out. Both cameras are good in their own regard. Like, just leave a positive comment or something. By the way, this video was a collaboration with my buddy Brandon Chong. He's an amazing iPhone photography, and he was the one that provided the iPhone 11 Pro for this video, so please subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on his Instagram. Now let's talk about the specs on both cameras today. So with the iPhone 11, this is Apple's flagship smartphone right now, other than the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The iPhone 11 Pro does have 3 cameras, all of them 12 megapixels. The first camera is a wide standard camera, which is 26 millimeters at f1.8, and it is optically image stabilized. Next, we got the telephoto lens, which is 52 millimeters at f2, and it is also optically image stabilized. And the last camera is the camera that I was the most excited about, which is the 13mm ultrawide at f2.4. The starting price of an iPhone 11 Pro is $1,379, but it can go upwards of $2,000 if you opt for the maxed out version in terms of storage of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. On the other hand, we got the Sony A7iii, which is one of the most popular mirrorless cameras ever because of its superb image quality for its relatively low price. The Sony A7iii features a 24 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor, 15 stops of dynamic range, 10 frames per second continuous shooting, and more cool stuff. The lenses I will be using today will be the one that I'm filming with, which is the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 for Sony E-mount lens. This was one of the most popular lenses in like 2019 because of its comparable image quality to the 24-70 f2.8 G Master, but for a way lower price. I'll also be using the Sigma Art 14-24 f2.8 DGDN lens for Sony E-mount, and I chose these two lenses because it really closely matches the focal lengths found on the iPhone. Plus, they happen to be the only 2 lenses I have. Coincidence? I think not. Everything combined with this Sony setup, it's easily over $6,000. So the iPhone already wins in the price category. But what sets the iPhone apart from my Sony A7 III is computational photography. But we're gonna talk more about that when we talk about the results. But first, let me roll some B-roll and vlog footage, and then we're gonna talk about the results. You know, while we're at it, let's roll the intro. Okay, so now I'm back from a day of shooting. Let's talk about the results that we got. Oh, by the way, with this video, I'm going to show you all of the pictures taken with the Sony A7 III first, and then I'm going to be showing you the picture taken with the iPhone. But the biggest thing that you need to know about this video is that some pictures I did shoot with auto. I know some photographers might be flipping out right now, but auto is honestly like pretty good because what the Sony is able to do, if you switch into the green eye mode, it can identify different scenarios that you're in, like backlit, or if it's like a sunset, or if it's a landscape or a portrait. And the Sony is able to kind of correct it in camera so that it is burned into the JPEG and it'll look like pretty good. So yeah, I did shoot in auto for some of them, and honestly the results look pretty good. Now with this video, I'm not gonna pixel peep too much because I don't wanna focus too much on the resolution, but instead on the overall image quality and the color. And if I need to, I'll punch in just to show you maybe like noise levels and stuff, but later on. Right here, we got a very standard landscape shot. And as you can see, this looks pretty good. This was shot with the Sony with the Sigma art lens at 24 millimeters. And this picture was shot with the iPhone at 26 millimeters. And honestly, like both of them look really good. Like the iPhone, considering it's a phone, like that's pretty good. And I can already talk so much about this first picture. Like there's such a dramatic change in colors. Now, going back to what I talked about earlier, which is about computational photography. So the reason why iPhones are just so convenient and so easy to use, like anyone can just pick up the phone, take a picture of it, and have like a beautiful image like straight out of camera, is because of computational photography. Now, computational photography combines multiple images and it uses AI enhancing technology to kind of brighten up parts of the image that the AI thinks is important. So let's say you're taking a portrait of someone like with like a backlit sky or something, it's able to identify that, you know, it's someone's face and automatically brighten that. That's kind of cool. But with this picture, the iPhone decided that the shadows in the leaves could be brought up a little bit more and the highlights of the sky can be brought down. And that's why it just looks so flat and it's so vibrant. On the Sony, it just looks really balanced and like what it was shot at. Like with the iPhone, like the colors did not look like this when we shot it. And that is because the iPhone is trying to make the image as pleasing to the eye as possible without you like doing any work to it. But let me show you what the iPhone does in camera automatically for you by editing a raw picture that I took with the Sony camera. So now I have Lightroom opened up. This is the picture that was taken with the iPhone, and this is the raw picture that was taken with the Sony. The iPhone, what it does is that it lowers the highlights, it brings up the shadows, and then maybe even exposure, boosts the contrast a little bit, and adds a ton of vibrancy and saturation. And already that looks pretty similar to the iPhone. If I toggle this before and after, that's what the iPhone is doing in post. Now, the reason why the Sony camera doesn't do this automatically in camera for you is because this does not look true to life. Like, I mean, it's pleasing to the eye. It's like good for Instagram pictures, but like if you're like a real landscape photographer, if you want the full manual control of like a professional camera, like you're not paying for something that makes the image for you and makes it like really unrealistic for you. Now let's sum up both pictures side by side. So with the iPhone, it takes a very vibrant image that is very pleasing to the eye, but it is not necessarily natural to what your human eye sees. And the Sony takes a picture that is very true to life and accurate to what you really see with the eye. Now let's take the same image and let's test out the zoom of both cameras. So with the iPhone, we're going to be shooting at 52 millimeters. To match it, I tried to shoot at 52 millimeters on the Sony, but I accidentally did 55 because the numbers are kind of rough. But anyways, looking at both images, like both look really good. Again, the Sony is more natural looking to what you would see in real life. You know, in my opinion, I think the iPhone kind of overdoes the HDR like a little bit. Like it looks kind of fake, especially what it does to the sky. Like I don't like how the sky is like super like saturated, but I mean, if that's like what pleases the eye, you can go for it. Let's talk about the next shot we're gonna do. So this is a color science test. So this picture was taken with the Sony A7 III, and this picture was taken with the iPhone, and both of them look really good. You know, colors are amazing, but just a little, I want to be like 100% transparent with you guys on this test. I shot this with an ND filter, like a variable ND filter. So I'm not sure if maybe there was a little bit of like color shift or anything, but I used this ND filter right here. But to be honest, I think it looks like pretty good. But I do see the Sony does go for the more warm kind of tone, but the iPhone goes for a little bit more of like a cooler tone. And it's also like a little bit more flat compared to the Sony picture. It doesn't have as much contrast. Now, this next test I'm going to do is an extreme HDR test. This really pushed both cameras to the limit. But before I do that, I need to move this microphone closer to my mouth because I'm talking so much and then it's making my mouth kind of dry. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more quieter. You're gonna hear ASMR Jason right now. All right, anyways. And yeah, I know that you can take like multiple images and kind of stitch them together with like the automatic metering or whatever it's called. For this one, I just handheld it, although to see if like the Sony A7 III was going to be able to make it better and kind of bring down the highlights automatically and bring up the shadows. But this was the image that it spat out, and this was the picture that the iPhone spat out. And this picture looks really good. I'm not gonna lie, this looks really good. You know, a lot of photographers in this case, they would take multiple images at different exposure levels with a tripod. Also maybe underexpose it so that you can bring up the shadows in post and bring down the highlights so that it doesn't clip. If you're trying to take just a single picture with one click, then it looks pretty good like the iPhone. But the Sony, like to be honest, it looked kind of washed out because, and I was using an ND filter and you know, the sky is blown out. So the iPhone, like computational photography, like kudos to you. Now this picture I took with Sony's HDR mode, which is taking multiple images and combining it into one image. This is what the iPhone took. And again, like the iPhone looks really good. It looks saturated, it looks vibrant. But the Sony, it looks kind of washed out. Maybe the ND filter was kind of affecting the results, but again, like you can correct this in post, but just straight out of the camera, the iPhone looks really good. Now this next test is going to be a portrait shot in a very difficult lighting situation, so portrait and HDR. The reason why this is like a really hard lighting situation is because it was like noon, the sun was like right above our head, the sky was like really bright, and the subject was like kind of dark because of the shadow casted by the sun right above the head. So in this case, if you want to be shooting in a very harsh lighting condition, like in noon with like really sharp light, then you would want to use one of these, like a reflector, so that you can reflect the light back onto your subject's face and body. Or you can use a flash with like a softbox and things like that. But this is going to be a test of just the raw, like let's see what both cameras can do in just this harsh lighting condition. Taking a look at the Sony, it looks pretty good, but if you look at the iPhone, damn, that looks really good because again, stitching pictures together, it is artificially enhancing, like, you know, the face, the body, because it's able to identify subject in the shot. Keep in mind though, portrait mode on iPhones is completely artificial. Like the blur in the background is like trying to emulate what it would look like with a professional level DSLR, but you know, sometimes it just doesn't cut out the background blur like that well from the subject. But in this case, with enough light, it honestly looks pretty good. Like the cutting looks like pretty good around the arms. Like I was always like kind of worried about like the hair and stuff, because like sometimes there might be like jaggedy pieces, but like in this case, it looks pretty good. Side by side, that's what it looks like. But again, you would never want to take a picture in this lighting condition with like no like softbox or no like bouncer light, because your image is going to look pretty bad. But the iPhone is going to do everything automatically for you. I can shoot in like RAW, and kind of underexpose so that I expose for the sky and bring up the shadows in post. But I'm not going to do that right now. Now let's talk about the same shot, but with the 2x zoom on the iPhone. So this was shot at 54 millimeters on the Sony A7 III. And as you can see, this honestly looks pretty good. Like the sky might be a little blown out in the background, but the background blur is legitimately like a background blur because it is like optical. It is real optics. It is no like artificial like bokeh or anything. But the iPhone, if you take a look at this picture, you know, the cutout was not that great on Brandon's shoulder over here. But in terms of like colors, like it's very clear that it's an iPhone. Like it looks like it was shot on an iPhone because iPhones just have that like characteristic, super vibrant, saturated look. Yeah, again, like that's the problem with portrait mode. It's like, it's not like completely perfect. Again, don't take pictures in a scenario like this. Take pictures during golden hour. That's like the best time. I love golden hour. Okay, now this is when the pictures get really interesting. So now we're going to do some low light shots. This is not like completely low light, but it's like dark. It was nighttime. This picture was shot on the Sony A7 III, straight out the camera in auto mode so that the camera is able to like, you know, do its magic on its own. So this picture was taken with the iPhone. It looks brighter. It looks a lot more like pleasing to the eye because the iPhone was able to identify that this was like a night mode shot. When you click the shutter, you have to like hold your phone still for like a second so that it's able to collect more light, and then it does like deep fusion magic or something like that. And again, like the lights aren't like blown out like with the picture with the Sony, but again, like with the Sony, of course, like I was shooting in RAW and JPEG, so if I wanted to, I could bring up the shadows, I could bring down the highlights and make this picture a lot like better and a lot more pleasing to the eye. But this is just straight auto. Now this picture is also another standard low light so that, you know, we can have like a little change of scenario. This was taken with the Sony. This was taken with the iPhone. And again, the iPhone just does whatever it thinks is going to please the eye the most, because the iPhone does have like an image processor in the A13 Bionic chip. Okay, now this is when it gets really interesting. Portrait mode, when it first came out, it was not good at all, like in low light. I remember when I first got the iPhone 7 Plus, I was like really happy that it gave me that like portrait effect. But I mean, that portrait effect only works on like on pictures, but not on video because it's like fake bokeh, right? It's like fake optics. I think what makes this picture very interesting is because I decide to have like a foreground element in the picture. As you can see, this brick wall is in the way on purpose because I want to show you the depth and how the depth is able to kind of fade in smoothly onto his face. So this is what the picture looks on the Sony camera, and this is what it looks like on the iPhone camera. Obviously, you can see the quality of the bokeh and the background blur and the foreground blur is just a lot more better on the Sony A7 III because it is legitimate bokeh. It is real optics, and that's why Brandon is just in pin sharp focus, and then everything else is like melted away. So it kind of gives that like high quality look to it because the subject really pops. Like the bokeh balls just don't have that characteristic of like real optics. Like it looks nice and all. It's getting better year by year. The bokeh balls just don't look, it just doesn't have that umph to it like with this picture that I took with the Sony A7 III. You know, very clean image by the Sony, and the iPhone does have like a little bit more like noise, artificial sharpening, things like that. Now this test is going to be a low light portrait of irregular objects. Now this is going to be a really big test for the iPhone because again, as I said, the iPhone background blur is like fake. With the iPhone, as you can see, this was probably like the best picture out of like the bunch that we took like 6 pictures. And because this is artificially done, as you can see, like the color was not perfect. Like with the one taken with the Sony, this part is like in focus, but this is like the side of the phone and this is out of focus. So, you know, it wasn't able to cut it off like that well. And also with this little nick on the finger, that was also like done pretty poorly. But I mean, considering this was a phone, like that's pretty good. And remember what I said, this picture was like the best one out of the bunch. So this was like one of the most common ones that I saw. You know, like this part was completely like fudged up, and then this part was especially really fudged up, like right beside the camera. You know, the color was not that great. But if you take a look at the Sony one more time, oh my god, this picture just looks so good. When our phone camera portrait mode is going to be ever as good as DSLR or mirrorless cameras, I'm not sure. Will we get there at one point? I'm pretty sure we will. but at this point, you know, you can't beat like real optics. Okay, and then now this brings me to my next point, which are different apps on the App Store. So there's this app called Focos on the App Store. So let's bring up the picture of Brandon one more time against like the brick wall or something like that. So what you can do is you can select different parts of the image and change the focus after the fact that you took them. Like this is really, really, really cool. Like holy moly, never in a million years would I imagine that your phone can change the focus of different, you know, of your picture, and you can like select it and even change the size of your bokeh. So let's say I want to make the bokeh more prominent, so I can change to like f1.4 and then it's gonna blur it even more. Like this honestly looks pretty good. Like this is not bad considering it's a phone. There's also this other feature where you can change the lighting and the effects. Like, yo, look at that. Yo, look at that. Oh my goodness. You can see a 3D picture of your scene. Like the, you know, the foreground is your wall, and then yo, look at that's so cool. That is so cool. Oh my goodness, look at that. Like this is not a sponsored video, but like this app is just so cool, and you're able to like select your focus and things like that. I'm not gonna go over every single feature. You know, you can kind of experiment on your own time, but this looks pretty cool and it's on your phone. Another app that I really like is the Moment app. With the Moment app, you're able to manually control like the different characteristics of your picture. You can control like ISO, you can control shutter speed, a white balance, things like that. So it's pretty cool. Of course, you can't control like aperture because, you know, your aperture is fixed on the iPhones. Now I'm going to talk about shooting in RAW. Now a big part of buying like a professional DSLR is your ability to shoot in RAW. Now you would want to shoot in RAW because you're able to really manipulate the colors a lot, and you're able to recover highlights, shadow details, and things like that. So you can shoot in RAW with the iPhones with the Moment app, but you can't shoot it with like the standard iPhone app, like for whatever reason. This was shot in RAW, and this was like before and after. Like you can really manipulate like the highlights and things like that. Like that looks pretty good. And this was shot on an iPhone. Like the RAW from it, like that's really not bad. And this was a picture that was shot with my Sony camera. And the RAW is just so powerful with the Sony cameras, and that's just why I love it so much. Now I boosted the shadows like quite a lot so you can see kind of like the background and stuff. But this still looks really clean and, you know, looks really good. But with like the iPhone RAW, it's like just not as powerful. So if I boost the shadows a little bit already, you can see like it's getting really grainy. It doesn't look that like good. You know, shooting in RAW, if it's like during the daytime or if it's like, you know, sunset, I think that would be really nice. So yeah, you can shoot in RAW with the iPhones, and you can manipulate the colors pretty well. Like I'm seriously impressed with the iPhone. Like this is like unimaginable like a couple years ago. Now this next test that we did was in very low light. So we shot this under a tree, and you know, with the contrast with like the lights, and you can see the background. I think this is really interesting because I'm also going to be testing out the different focal lengths. Like, you know how night mode doesn't work with the ultra wide cameras? So this is when we really pushed the iPhone to its limit. With the Sony, I was using this lens, the Sigma Art lens at 24 millimeters, and the picture looks amazing. This picture is definitely grammable. This picture was shot on the iPhone, and this also looks really good. Like considering that this was a phone, like phones without night mode will basically just see this. Like this is simulated, but it'll see like it's really dark. This is super low light, but this is with the 0.5x zoom, so with the ultra wide. This was the picture that I shot with the Sony, and because it's like optical glass, it's still f2.8. This picture looks very clean. It looks amazing. But if you were to switch it to the iPhone, now this is when the iPhone really falls apart. Like if you punch in 400%, like you can see the clarity difference between the iPhone and the Sony A7 III. But considering that the one that was taken on the right was taken with an iPhone, I don't know, that's pretty impressive to me. So another bonus kind of shot that I want to include in this comparison was this picture of my drum set over here. So this was really, really, really low light. Like legitimately, like I could barely see a thing. This is what the Sony looked like, and this is what the iPhone looks like. So this was with the standard zoom with 26 millimeters on the iPhone, and honestly this looks really, really good considering that this was with a phone and I handheld this. Like that's pretty impressive. But this is when, again, the iPhone like is gonna start falling apart, which is in the ultra wide category. So this is the picture that I took with my Sony camera ultra wide of my drum set sitting on the throne. And then this next image was what was taken with my iPhone with the ultra wide camera. Like, I'm not even joking, this is what came straight from the camera. So again, like extreme low light is what is kind of the weakness of the iPhones right now. Anyways, our next category is going to be long exposure with like light trails. I thought that I was going to destroy Brandon in this category, but it turns out like the iPhone is able to take light trail pictures too, because the Moment app has this feature where you can take motion blur pictures or light trails, which is really cool. It does this like artificially. Let me just show you the results. So this was just shot straight out of the camera on the Sony. This was JPEG with the ultra wide camera. You know, it looks very clean. I shot this at ISO 50, so there's literally like zero noise in the picture. Now this is a picture that was shot on an iPhone. Like, considering that this was shot on an iPhone, like that is pretty impressive. What I think is even more impressive is that the Moment app is able to identify what is a moving highlight, such as like a car headlight or a tail light, and it kind of keeps that on the screen like more prominently, and then the rest of the picture is not like overexposed or anything. Let me show you another picture that was shot with the iPhone. So this was shot on the iPhone. I think this was with the telephoto camera. This is another picture that was taken with the iPhone. Like, I'll throw on some behind the scenes, but like literally you can see the light trails being drawn on in real time. I think this is possible because, like, you know, your phone basically takes a video of your scene and then it averages out the highlight value of like the light that it captures. So that's why you can kind of see these like gaps appear like in the picture. It's not like one continuous streak. It's because it's taking it at like, I don't know, 24, 30 or 60 frames per second. But talking about the overall like image though, you can kind of see with this ultra wide shot, you know, there's a lot of like banding over here. It's not banding, like, I don't know, there's like a correct word to like use, but it just doesn't look that great over here. This is another shot I took with the Sony, and because with the Sony I shot in RAW and it was also 50 ISO, which is the lowest ISO, like the image is so clean. Like, I can push and pull this image a lot and it'll still be really good. So I can like recolor the image. Like, why not? Like, I'll just show you. Let's try to push and pull the colors a little bit. I'm just going to drag a preset that I made. Boom. And then we fixed the color. Now we fixed the white balance. And boom, that looks really good. There's a creative style to it. And it's shot in ultra wide. Plus, it's really noise free. Like, that's before and after. But with the iPhone, you can't really like push and pull the colors that much, like at all, because it's shot in JPEG and it's like not good. It wasn't a good quality picture to begin with because, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a phone. So yeah, to sum up light trail photography, you can do it with your iPhone. The quality is not going to be as good, but your light trails are going to be more prominent because the phone is going to be able to identify the highlight details and kind of enhance that a little bit more. Now, talking about the next category, it's going to be astrophotography. So this is when the iPhone is really going to suffer. Let me just show you the picture. So this was a picture that I took with the Sony A7iii, and this looks really good. This picture looks very clean. Each star is like a pixel like in size. Now, this is the picture I took with the iPhone. This is not even ultra wide. This was taken with the standard camera because when I switched it to ultra wide, it just looks dark. Like, the picture literally looked like this. Like, this is simulate, but this looks, it was black like in the picture. Now, here's another picture I took with the Sony A7iii. The stars look so good. And you can even see like I caught like a comet in the picture over here. And this is the picture I took with the iPhone with the standard camera with night mode. Looks kind of bad. Like, it wasn't even ultra wide or anything. So yeah, astrophotography is going to be tough on the iPhone. Oh, and another thing with the Sony is that you can use the built-in intervalometer and take pictures like, you know, in a sequence and put it together in post and then have something that looks like this. Like, we're only there for like 30 minutes, so I didn't get that much of the stars moving, but that looks really good. And this is something that you can't take with an iPhone, like, period. But what about the categories that I didn't cover today? Like, for example, today I didn't cover like sports photography, aerial photography, and wildlife photography. Like, I didn't talk about those. Now, sports photography would be really hard with an iPhone. Like, it's pretty much impossible because, like, let me just pull up an example. Like, let's say a baseball player is like mid pitching or mid like swinging. Like, you might see a picture like this. It's zoomed in a lot. Like, you can see the compression. This was clearly taken with like a really expensive lens. So yeah, with sports photography, you can never like get close to the action. You have to use like optical zoom in order to get like the pictures that you want to take. So yeah, sports photography would be no for the iPhone. And yeah, aerial photography, yeah, that's like a drone's job. But with wildlife photography, again, like it's kind of hard to be close into the action. So if you've ever seen those like really big white lenses that are like a bazooka, that is like a wildlife photography lens. Those are like really expensive, but you're able to zoom into your subject a lot and have like good blur in the background, so you're able to separate the subject from the background in the picture. And with wildlife photography, unless you're photographing like a squirrel or something that's like close by, like it's kind of hard to do with an iPhone, or it's pretty much impossible, because if you want to take a picture sort of like this, like let me just show you another, like this picture looks really good. Like you can't take a picture like this with an iPhone because it doesn't have that optical zoom. But yeah, with professional wildlife photography, you can't do that with an iPhone. So let's sum up everything that we talked about in this video today. Again, it's the difference between photography with like a camera and computational photography. Like with the iPhone, let me read you some of these like specs. There's an A13 processor, there's a neural engine, there's machine learning, and there's like deep fusion, which is this like new technology that Apple was able to put into the iPhone. Like rather than me trying to explain what deep fusion is, let me pass it down to Phil Scheller, and he's going to explain how deep fusion works on the iPhone.
So this is a photo that was shot on an iPhone 11 Pro using this deep fusion technology. And this kind of an image would not have been possible before. We use machine learning to take this photo in low to medium light. What it does, it shoots 9 images. Before you press the shutter button, it's already shot 4 short images, 4 secondary images. When you press the shutter button, it takes 1 long exposure. And then in just 1 second, the neural engine analyzes the fused combination of long and short images, picking the best among them, selecting all the pixels, and pixel by pixel, going through 24 million pixels to optimize for detail and low noise. It is computational photography mad science.
So of course, I'm never gonna give up my camera for like an iPhone like anytime soon, because you just can't beat the great image quality of a professional camera, because there's real optics. There's a bigger sensor with bigger photo sites, so the images just look a lot more cleaner. Like there's a reason why professional photographers don't use an iPhone to take pictures for real clients. But again, if you consider that this is something that fits into your pocket, like that's pretty impressive. Like here are some benefits of the iPhone. So first, of course, there's the smaller size. It is really portable. There are different lenses like on the back of your phone, so you can switch between them really easily with like 1 button. Like with a DSLR camera, in order to switch from a telephoto lens to a wide angle lens like this ultra wide over here, like you have to take off the lens and you have to put it on. You have to make sure like no dust goes on the sensor or in like, you know, the back of the lens or things like that. So like, you know, switching lenses like in a run and gun situation, it would be like kind of hard. And with phones, you can change the different lighting situations even after you take the picture. Like I know on, you know, the iPhones with the portrait mode, there's like contour light, there's studio light, there's like some kind of stencil white background, I forgot what it's called. And better yet, it uses that metadata so that you can change the bokeh after you take the picture. Like with DSLR cameras, you can't change the bokeh after you take the picture unless you like Photoshop it or something. iPhones auto enhance in post. Plus you can share on social media immediately. You can take an Instagram story right on your phone, upload it like right when you take it, like with your camera, like it's just a camera, right? You can't like call an Uber or something. With a phone, you can also take selfies. And there are so many like photography apps that let you like apply beauty modes. You can, like the Moment app, you can have like light trails. With Focus, you can change the different like focus of your image. But yeah, with the phone, you can't just think of it as, you know, a camera. Like sure, there is like a pretty decent camera, because the smartphone camera is just one small part of the bigger package of the phone. You can make a phone call, you can FaceTime your friends, you can upload to social media, you can play games, you can organize productivity, you can take notes. Like you can do so much with a phone that a camera is unable to do, because all a camera is able to do is take good pictures and videos. Now let's talk about the benefits of a professional DSLR or mirrorless camera. It is way better in low light, because with professional cameras, you're paying for real optics with real glass and real like a big sensor. Like with the Sony A7iii, it's a full frame sensor, so you can get a lot of bokeh in the background. So jumping back to the picture that we took earlier of the iPhone 11 Pro wasn't able to cut out the picture of the iPhone that well and separate from the background. You know, there are some like parts that wasn't like done really well, but with a professional DSLR camera, you can get really good looking shots because it is real bokeh, and the quality of the bokeh balls of the background, it just looks really good and the subject really pops. And then probably the biggest reason why you would want to get a professional DSLR camera or mirrorless camera is because there are so many lens choices on the market. You can get ones that are ultra wide, you can get ones that are just standard, like, you know, this Tamron lens over here. You can get like those really big bazooka lenses so that you can take like wildlife photography. You can have ultra wide macro lenses that allow you to get really interesting perspectives. And also you can buy different lenses that tailor to your needs. Like for me, I need a lens that is very convenient for like run and gun situations. So I really like the zoom lenses. Even though you're missing out on maybe like a bigger aperture. Like I have a buddy, he's like a portrait photographer, so he decided to get a prime lens, which is something that I would get, but it's just not right now because I want something that is very like convenient. And if you're someone like Paul Nicklin, then you would want like a big, you know, like bazooka lens because you want to be able to zoom in to like the wildlife, the animals, and get that really nice background blur. Like for me, like I would probably not use that because, you know, I'm not trying to vlog with like a 600mm. So yeah, there is basically an endless like selection of lenses, and different photographers can buy the lenses that suit their needs the most so that they can create the art that they want to use. Also with cameras, you can use like speed lights, you can use flashes, and kind of like different accessories, ND filters, so that you can get the images that you want to get. With a phone, like I'm not sure if you can connect like a flash or like a softbox or anything of that sort. Now, this is probably one of the most important things to take home from this video. It is not always about the gear that you use that makes an image. It is how you use it, how the photographer uses the gear that they have to take the images that they want to get. Yeah, sure, you can get a camera with like more dynamic range with more megapixels, but you can't be a good picture that has good composition, colors, has good like depth, foreground elements, things like that. The gear just kind of helps you to achieve the look that you're going for in your piece of art. And I've said this so many times before, but technology is progressing at an exponential rate. I know this isn't really camera related, but IBM created their first hard drive ever in 1956. This hard drive was called the IBM Model 350. It cost a lot of money. It weighed a ton. The size was like bigger than the refrigerator, and it only held 3.75 megabytes. Yeah, megabytes. You would have to have 13,000 of these units in order to hold a standard 4K Blu-ray movie. To me, the size of the machine, like that's not the impressive part. I think what's most impressive is that it took 51 years to go from 3.75 megabytes all the way to 1 terabyte, which is 1000 gigabytes, and that was achieved in 2007. But 2 years later, in 2009, we reached 2 terabytes. So you see, it took 51 years to get from, you know, 3.75 megabytes to 1000 gigabytes, but it took 2 years to go from 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes. And now there are drives available that are SSDs, which are even faster, and they're like tens of hundreds of gigabytes. Now, going back to smartphone cameras, if it's able to go from this to this in 9 years, then imagine what the future is going to look like another 10 years, 20 years. Will there ever be a day when smartphone cameras are going to be as good as like professional level DSLRs? Probably not. Like, I'm not really sure, to be honest, because, you know, a lot of the things that the iPhone does, it's trying to simulate it in its own way, to like simulate with the look of like a professional DSLR camera. You can't really beat the optics and big sensor of a professional big DSLR camera because the laws of physics just don't allow something with a small sensor to collect as much light, or something with a small sensor to have as much bokeh in the background. I don't know, only time will tell. As a person that is really into tech and cameras, I am really excited to see the evolution and the improvements made in the next like couple of years. Like, I am honestly really excited to see what the future of technology is gonna hold. Anyways, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys are new to JCity, I make videos about my university life as well as with photography and filmmaking. So yeah, if you guys are new, you guys should definitely click that subscribe button and click the bell beside the subscribe button so that you're going to be notified of any new future posts. And follow me on Instagram at jason.ing.media. Shout out to Brandon for helping me with this video. And you know what? Leave a positive, family-friendly comment because I want this channel to be a place that is very friendly, really welcoming, And if there are any points that I missed or if I said incorrectly, you guys should definitely comment down in the comment section below so that I'll learn something and others watching this video will also learn something. That's the video. I hope you continue having a beautiful day. Peace.